Greetings.
Hello.
Salutations. Welcome to the Mathom House Podcast. I'm Mitchell.
And I'm Mark. Haha, I got in.
No,
I got in.
I'm Mark. I'm still Mark.
No.
Yeah, no, I'm not Mark. Not today. Today I am Mitchell.
Today is not this day.
Today is tomorrow. What is yesterday, but today is tomorrow?
You've already confused me.
Hell yeah, I did. The Mathom House Podcast. We took a little break, but we're back.
We had a lot of technical difficulties.
Technical difficulties. Life happens, but we're back. We missed you all very much. I'm giving each and every one of you a high five right now. High five me, Mark.
No.
He's being a dick and not high fiving me back.
Jerry Seinfeld said that high fives are the lowest form of male communication.
And do you trust Jerry Seinfeld's sociological impact on the world?
No, I don't question
He
that.
wore a puffy shirt.
Yeah, but he disapproved of the puffy shirt.
He still wore it.
Yeah, because he was trying to be nice.
Well, that's what happens. That's what you get for being nice. So, before we get into the whole podcast,
Mm-hmm.
few things first. Like us on YouTube. I think you subscribe on YouTube, actually.
Yes.
There's that subscription button. Click it. Click the like button. Leave a nice comment. We love nice comments. Shoot us an email, mathomhousepod@gmail.com. We haven't gotten any yet, but we will respond when we get one. We're also on Facebook, facebook.com/mathomhousepodcast, possibly. Just type us in.
It should come up.
There's only one other Mathom House podcast out there, but our views are a lot bigger than theirs.
Yay!
So, suck it, bitch. What are we talking about today, Mark?
Today we are talking about The Legend of Zelda,
Do.
and we are talking about Chapter 5 of The Hobbit.
So we're just getting all medieval. I almost said Middle Eastern. Medieval on this today,
Yeah, we're going with, fantasy, popular modern fantasy.
which is my favorite. So
Yeah.
we're going to roll our D20 like always,
Mhm.
see what it is, but not just any D20, a Magic the Gathering D20.
Because this couldn't get any nerdier, you had to bring in Magic together.
Yes, I did have to make. I mean, it fits. So even numbers, Mark. I'm odd numbers because I'm odd. What is it? A 14.
Even number.
Oh my God, Mark's going first for one.
This is the first time.
And how many episodes? This is 8.
Something like that.
7,
6? I don't know.
7.
Something like
I
that.
think this is 7 or 8.
Yeah. We don't even know how many we've made.
Well, it depends if we count Star Wars or not.
This is a side series.
Yeah, it's just the side. It's
Yeah.
the side, bitch.
Yeah.
All right. So we talked about The Hobbit,
Mm-hmm.
but more specifically, Chapter 5 of The Hobbit.
Yes.
Now, why Chapter 5?
Well, before we get there, I think I want to go back and sort of talk about the publication history of the book. And I know that sounds horribly dull, but
Let's do it.
it's completely relevant to the main topic at hand. So
Well,
stay with me.
Let's do it.
So, as most people know, The Hobbit, or There and Back Again, is one of the most beloved books published in the English language in the 20th century.
In the whole world.
Well, yeah, and kind of thus out of the whole world. And in many ways, it sparked what we might call like the modern fantasy genre. It was sort of the germ of that. And definitely one of the most memorable scenes and characters from Tolkien's world is Chapter 5, Riddles in the Dark. And then this introduces both the One Ring, which becomes important in The Lord of the Rings,
So important.
and the character of Gollum. But what a lot of readers don't know is that Chapter 5 has 2 main versions.
I didn't know that until you told me about it like a week ago.
I know, it's super cool. So there was the first version of the chapter that was published, and then later on it was heavily revised. And so that's where our main topic is going to be. But famously, Tolkien, who's the author of The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, was working on grading papers because he was a college professor one night in 1930. And while he was sort of daydreaming while he's scoring these papers, he wrote, "In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit," which is the opening line of The Hobbit. And so then he started working on it. And by 1932, he had finished the story. And he wasn't really planning on publishing it per se, and he passed it around to like family and friends and showed it to a couple students. And one of his students, Elaine Griffiths, lent it to someone that she knew named Susan Dagnall, who was an employee of Allen and Unwin, a book publisher.
Oh.
Yeah. And Susan was impressed with it, so she passed it along to Stanley Unwin, who, of course, was one of the major partners of the publisher. And he didn't read it at first. He passed it on to his 10-year-old son, Rayner, and he said, read it, write me a review, and based on your review, I'll publish the book or not.
That's cool.
Yeah, and so obviously Rayner liked it, and it got published. So it got published in 1937, and by December of 1937, so within that same year, it had sold pretty well, and so they asked Tolkien to write a sequel, of which he started writing it. And that sequel, of course, would be
Fellowship of the Ring.
Would be The Lord of the Rings, right. And but as he was writing it, he was trying to figure out what to do with a sequel, because he kind of wrote himself in a corner. Because at the end of The Hobbit, it says that Bilbo, the main character, had lived happily ever after to the end of his days. So that kind of implies that he had no other further major adventures, right?
Well, he didn't.
Well, no. So he had to come up with a different story. And he eventually decided that the magic ring that Bilbo got along on his
One
adventure...
ring to rule them all.
Well, it wasn't the One Ring yet.
One ring to find them.
One ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. But anyway...
We're so cool.
Yeah, I know, right? He decided that the ring was a cool thing and that would be the germ of his story. But as he was writing what would later become The Lord of the Rings, he came up with concepts about the ring that didn't fit with the construction of the ring in The Hobbit.
In The Hobbit, originally, it was just a ring, right?
It's just an invisibility ring.
Yeah, nothing super cool about it.
I mean, other than that. But
I mean,
yeah.
it's like the invisibility cloak. It's there, but
right.
There's nothing cool behind it. It's just, you put it on, you can't be seen.
Exactly. Like everyone remembers, for instance, in The Lord of the Rings, and especially the films, when Frodo accidentally puts on the ring, everything gets all swooshy and shadowy. And
like the Night Watch. That's Game of Thrones.
That's Game of Thrones,
That's
yeah.
Game of Thrones. Those big scary guys come after you when you put it on because they know where you are.
Right. Well, none of that aspect was there in The Hobbit, and there's reasons why. I mean, it still works, but... there wasn't anything sinister about the ring, which, of course, is important in The Lord of the Rings. But anyway, so he decided that Chapter 5 of The Hobbit, Riddles in the Dark, where Bilbo gets the ring, had to be changed. And so as Tolkien was working on The Lord of the Rings, he made these revisions and sent them along to the publisher as sort of a, not quite a preview, but kind of an example of what he's been working on and how. And so at the next printing of The Hobbit, they included those revisions in the text.
So that's when the second edition came out. It included...
Yes.
It included the new Chapter 5.
Exactly. So the new Chapter 5 edition, or what we'll just call the current edition.
Because that's the one that's being printed now.
Yeah, and there's, sorry, go ahead.
Is the first edition still in print anywhere?
Yes. So they just re-released it last year. It's called the Facsimile First Edition. So you can order that from Amazon. You just type in The Hobbit Facsimile First Edition and you can get it. But before last year, it was very difficult to come by because a first edition Hobbits, like the first print run, go for many thousands of pounds.
Yeah, because it's, a 75-year-old book?
Mm-hmm.
And let's say a kid had it, got it at like 7. The kid's in his 90s now. Like that
Yeah.
book, a lot of them probably didn't even survive.
Well, yeah, and think about it was published in 1937, right before the Great Depression, and then
37.
37.
Great Depression was early 30s.
It was in 1929, so it was like during the Great Depression.
Okay.
And then World War II was coming up, so it's not like a lot of people had a lot of money to buy their children books.
They were making ketchup soup.
Yeah. So it was a little rough, and not everyone, by far the vast majority of people have read what we're calling the current edition.
That's what I read.
Mm-hmm. And the current edition came out in 1951, and it incorporated the changes that he made. Now, so Tolkien began writing Lord of the Rings in late 1937, but he didn't finish it until 1949. So almost 12 years.
So was Lord of the Rings like all three of the books as we know them now, or was it just Fellowship of the Ring?
The whole thing. He wrote it all at once.
So it got split up later.
Right.
Okay.
Well, because you have to remember, post-war Britain had a lot of material shortages, so there was paper rationing. Just imagine that, right? In today's world, where you can just print off a million things and no one cares, right?
Like you today.
Like I did today. So in order to save money, the publisher broke up The Lord of the Rings into 3 volumes, and in order to save printing costs, essentially.
Okay.
And they actually didn't expect high sales because, again, if anyone has read both The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit is a very lighthearted story. I mean, it definitely has, very serious moments.
But it was targeted at children.
True. And then Lord of the Rings is incredibly dense, incredibly serious.
I'm 22 years old and I still can't get through it.
Yeah, I know, right? It's a pretty serious book. And it wasn't the sequel the publisher asked for. And most people say that The Lord of the Rings would never have been published at any other time or by any other publisher in history.
Really?
Yeah. And
that would have been a sad world.
I know. And, again, they expect modest sales, but as of 2007, I couldn't find any more recent updates. They had sold over 150 million copies.
Which it's got to be more than that now.
It's way more than that now. But the point is, it's one of the most... it's one of the best-selling books written in the 20th century.
And rightfully so.
Yeah, I mean, to find books that outsell it, you have to go to, like, the Bible or Shakespeare books, basically things that are signed in class.
So Lord of the Rings is on par with the Bible.
Pretty much. I mean, the Bible is the best-selling book of time by far.
I mean, duh, but
after that...
Lord of the Rings is my Bible.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of is. But, Lord of the Rings is way up there in terms of sales. But anyway... So, and also in 1966, Tolkien made a few other changes. So this is after the publication of The Lord of the Rings to The Hobbit, but they were very minor things, like a couple of changing of names and some word choices, but nothing earth-shattering.
Yeah.
But anyway, so let's get on to the chapter 5.
Chapter 5.
So I think before we... talk to changes, we have to sort of give the basic plot outline for people who haven't read it in a while.
Yeah. All right, and we're back. Awkward pause.
Yes, but we're working on my computer now.
Yeah,
so
technical difficulty. So Mark's computer is less crappy than mine. So we're gonna
nice qualification.
We're gonna cross our fingers and hope this works. If there's any more awkward pauses, you'll know why.
Or we're just being awkward. Like there.
So we left off. We were talking about Chapter 5.
Yeah. So
what happened in Chapter 5?
Right.
Actually, before we go into that,
right.
Chapter 5 was my first forte into The Hobbit in 6th grade.
Oh, why is that?
We did a play version of it.
Oh, of just the Chapter 5.
Yeah, we did like a play version to as an introduction to it.
Huh. And so there's only 2 actors because there's only 2 characters in it.
Yeah, like we'd popcorn.
Okay. Oh, I hated popcorn.
Yeah, me too.
But okay, that's interesting.
So yeah, that's actually what got me into The Hobbit. Was I 6th grade read the Chapter 5 and I was like, holy damn, this is cool.
Oh, okay.
That's what I sounded like as a kid. I talk like this.
Well, I mean, what were you, Southern somehow?
Every accent I do goes Southern.
Okay.
It's the Kentucky in me.
Oh dear. Okay, well, at least you're a border state.
Yeah, right. So anyway,
yeah,
Chapter 5.
So for
brief
those,
synopsis.
Right. So for those who don't remember, Bilbo, Gandalf, and the dwarves had been captured by goblins in the mountains, and Gandalf basically frees them, and then they run off into the dark to try to escape.
Yes.
And Bilbo bumps his head on a stalactite or something, and he gets knocked out and gets left behind.
Left behind.
Right. So he wakes up, and he's, of course, scared and confused, and he's in a dark tunnel. And he gropes around on the dark, on his all fours, and puts his hand on a certain round metal object, and then puts it in his pocket and promptly forgets about it.
It's a certain metal object, the certain metal object I'm thinking of?
It is.
Oh.
And as he's sort of scared and afraid and not knowing what to do, he remembers that he has an elvish dagger in his pants, and he draws it out, And well, he doesn't have a scabbard at the time. And I know it sounds funny, but that's what he
Yeah,
had.
I turned into a 5-year-old.
Yeah, yeah. And he pulls it out, and this gives him courage because it glows in the dark. And what that means is that it's an ancient blade from thousands of years ago.
Yes, it is.
And so this gives him hope. And for the first time, he goes out on an adventure by himself.
Question about the sword.
Yes.
In the movies,
Mhm.
I don't know about the book, but the movies, it glows when the orcs are nearby, right?
Yes.
Why was it glowing in The Hobbit?
Because they were in the goblin tunnels.
So goblins, it glows with goblins and orcs. Are they related?
Goblins and so like it's goblins and orcs are kind of like the rectangle square business,
Okay.
where goblins are a word that some people refer to goblins as, but also if you are referring to goblins normally, it refers to like a smaller breed of orc.
Okay.
So like, you know how in the Lord of the Rings films, how there's like the little itty bitty ones that like crawl up the walls and they're a little smaller?
Mhm.
Those are goblins, but
Okay.
the bigger ones are called orcs, but they're all orcs.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So anyway, he decides to go on and try to find his way out of the tunnel, and he comes upon a underground lake, which is Gollum's Lake. And Gollum sees Bilbo from afar, and now Gollum had been up that way towards the goblin tunnels a couple hours earlier, and as he normally did, he found a goblin and snuck up behind it, murdered it, and ate it, because that's how he would eat, other than the fish in the lake.
Yeah.
And so Gollum sees Bilbo, and he's already full, so he doesn't need to eat, really. But he's a little curious, so he sneaks up on Bilbo and starts talking to him. And one reason why he starts talking to him is also because he sees the sword. And so he decides, I'm not going to attack him just right now because he has the sword. And so basically, in order to figure out who Bilbo is and to kind of buy time, he decides, hey, we'll have a riddle competition.
The infamous riddle off.
I know, the riddle off. Well, in the book, it basically talks about how the riddle game is like this ancient practice, like this ancient thing that people do, and there are like special rules to it and all these other things. But Gollum makes the deal, or offers the deal, that if Gollum wins the game, he will eat Bilbo. And if Bilbo wins the game, he will show him the way out of the goblin tunnels and out of the mountain. And now Bilbo, of course, has really no option because he doesn't know where he is and how to get out. So he at least has a 50-50 shot, and he agrees to it. And so they trade riddles back and forth, until Bilbo can't think of a riddle anymore. And if you can't think of another riddle, you forfeit the game. So he would be, at least in theory, eaten by Gollum, so that's not a good thing.
No.
And while he's trying to think of a riddle, Bilbo puts his hand in his pocket, feels the ring that he had forgotten about, and says, "What have I got in my pocket?" just out loud, as one would. And Gollum thinks that that is a riddle. And so he asks for 3 guesses, and Gollum eventually gives 4 guesses. He throws in 2 at the last minute with his last one, and so he loses the game. Now, so Gollum is all upset that he lost the game, and Bilbo's happy, of course. And Bilbo says, "Okay, well, I won. Let's go up the tunnel, show me the way.
I don't want to be here anymore. Let's
Yeah.
go somewhere else."
You're creepy and awful, and, take me. You're threatening to eat me, essentially.
precious.
Yeah, exactly. Take me out of here. And Gollum says, "Well, wait 1 minute. Let me go back to my house." And he doesn't have a house, but go back to where I live, and I'm going to get something, and I'll be right back. And Bilbo thinks, oh, he's just trying to get out of the deal. I'll never see him again. But of course, Gollum is planning on going back, and he says, well, I'm going to get my precious, my birthday present from where I live, put it on, and I'll squeeze the Bagginses to death and, for beating me at the riddle game. He goes to his little island. He can't find his birthday present. He screams bloody murder. He goes, "Lost!" And Bilbo hears this and sees Gollum's murderous eyes in the background and runs off. scared.
As one would do.
As one would. Now, as Bilbo is running in the dark, he trips on a rock, and while he does that, his finger, slips into the ring in his pocket, and Gollum runs past him.
Because he's invisible.
Because the ring makes him invisible. And so Gollum now thinks that Bilbo lied and knew the way out all along. And so he goes to the way out, and Bilbo follows him and hears about what the ring does. Because Gollum's talking to himself, like, oh, the Bagginses must have known it makes them invisible, and da-da-da-da-da. He was after it the whole time.
Oh, man, he can't see me. I must be invisible.
Yeah, exactly. And so as Bilbo and Gollum get closer to the exit, Gollum stops at this point where, like, blocking the last, basically, hallway out to the area, out to the wider world. And Bilbo, for a moment, says, this creature might follow me out of the mountain. He doesn't know I'm here. He's threatened essentially to kill me. I should stab him and get rid of him while I'm safe. Mm-hmm. But then he doesn't. He decides not to.
In retrospect, he probably should have.
Well, we'll get to that, Mitchell. And he instead leaps over him. Gollum feels this, if some like wind, passed from feeling it. And Gollum realizes what had happened, and Gollum is afraid of the light. He's afraid of going out of the mountain, and so he doesn't follow him. And Gollum cries after Bilbo, "Thief, thief, thief, Baggins, we hates it, we hates it, we hates it forever." And so Bilbo never meets Gollum again, and he goes off, and when he eventually reunites with Gandalf and the dwarves, he doesn't tell them how he escaped, and he doesn't tell them about the ring. Eventually,
Which, in the first edition, doesn't really matter that much.
No, it's just he basically wants to prove that he is capable to the dwarves, because the dwarves are like, Gandalf made us take this hobbit along, and we think he's kind of useless. He's nice, but he's useless.
He's not a very good thief. Actually, he's a very good thief.
Well, he's becoming a thief.
Yeah.
Remember, Gollum just called him a thief.
That's true.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Bilbo eventually does tell the dwarves about the ring when he helps them escape from the spiders, and then he uses the ring again in his encounter with Smaug the dragon. It's good to be invisible when you're around a dragon.
Life advice from Mark. If you're around a dragon, you should probably be invisible at some point.
I mean, it's kind of obvious, but, I thought I'd put it out there. Right.
Jesus.
So that's, then Bilbo, his adventure ends, he comes back home, and the story ends, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
But what we just talked about is what happened in the revision. Most of what we just talked about didn't happen in the first edition of the story.
And yeah, the first edition, Gollum wasn't that crazy, right?
Well, this is kind of the weird thing.
That was the impression I got from it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll go over specific instances, but what's really interesting about Gollum is that the changes from what were called the first edition and the current edition is that the first edition Gollum is less miserable and less evil.
Yeah.
But you don't care about him as much.
No.
Like the second, we'll call the current edition Gollum, is much more tragic and pitiable.
Yeah, like reading the first edition version, I was like, okay, Gollum's here.
He's kind of weird.
Whatever.
And, yeah.
He's just like a weird little guy. But the second one, like, you could feel like why I should care about him. Like, I could see why people wouldn't have cared about him in the 30s reading the first revision. It's like, okay, whatever. He's here, he's gone. But like knowing now what he did in the meaning of the ring, it's like, oh God, this is intense.
Yeah, and actually that really ties together with a lot of the initial reviews of the book. Like a lot of the comments from the initial reviews in the 30s were, oh, one of the most memorable parts of the book are the fun riddles, and when you read them with your children, try to guess them together. Mm-hmm. Well, now when people read the book, yeah, the riddles are fun, but one of them, again, what most people talk about is the character of Gollum and how creepy he is.
They're not the focal point of the chapter anymore.
Exactly.
It's more character-driven, which I like how we changed that.
Yeah. And
I usually don't like when people go back and change things, but it definitely changed for the better.
Well, as we'll see, Tolkien was the king of retcon, which was a term that didn't exist in his lifetime.
I mean, Tolkien's just the king of life.
I mean, pretty much. But so let's talk about the differences. So let's come up with a couple examples.
I love examples.
Right. So basically everything in the chapter, with a couple minor changes in word choices and things, is the same until Gollum is introduced.
Yeah, like I was reading I found it online. I'll probably post it when I post this on Facebook. There'll be a link to the website I found this on. It was 2 columns. One side was the original edition, one side was the new edition, and it was side by side, and then all the changes were highlighted in blue text.
Mm-hmm.
So that was actually really cool to read and compare and contrast instead of like having 2 books going back and forth. It was right there.
Yeah, that is really neat. It's kind of like the student editions of Shakespeare, where it has the original and then it has like the modern language version. Yeah, it's
so
like
if anybody wants to read that, it's going to be in the YouTube description and posted on Facebook as well.
Okay, cool. So one of the first major differences is the way that Gollum is introduced. So, like for instance, when both versions are describing Gollum and his character, they talk about why he thought about the riddle game.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the current edition, so the revised edition, it says, asking them, meaning riddles, and sometimes guessing them, had been the only game he had ever played with other funny little creatures sitting in their holes in the long, long, long ago, before he lost his friends and was driven away, alone, and crept down, down into the dark under the mountains. All right?
You ever think about going to audiobook reading?
No.
I would listen to that.
Oh, God. But the first edition is the same until it goes to the part where it says before he lost his friends. But instead it says, before the goblins came and he was cut off from his friends far under the mountains. Now, materially, they're basically the same, right?
Mm-hmm.
But notice how in the first edition, it's just he's cut off from the goblins. The goblins come, he can't get to his friends anymore, and he's underneath the mountain.
Yeah.
Like, unfortunate, but it doesn't focus on how sad and alone he is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then listen to the revised version. Before he lost his friends and was driven away alone and crept down, down into the dark under the mountains. See how much more sad? Like,
yeah.
Why was he driven away? What's that story?
Yeah, like there's character to him now. He's not just some weird little man that's living in the cave. Like, what did he do? And then we find out later.
We do.
And
there's more mystery about him.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, he crept. And you don't generally apply the word crept to nice things.
You really don't. It's more of like a...
You don't say, like
scary.
The cute puppy crept over. But
yeah,
you do
like,
say,
my cat Mo crept over. It's like, no, the monster crept down the layer to kill the guy.
Exactly. Like, crept has this negative meaning. And also... the revised version, which is scarier, also sounds more tragic.
It really does.
Right. And now, even though we might find out that he deserves what he got, essentially.
I mean, he totally does, but you don't know that at the time, and then it leaves you thinking, what did he do? Why does he deserve this?
Right.
Instead of just saying, little man in the cave. Sweet.
Yeah. He's just sort of a little weird. Now, the other thing which is really neat is one of the things, when I heard about this revised edition, one of the first things that cropped into my mind is that the addition of the mention of Gollum's grandmother would be one of those additions.
Mm-hmm.
And, okay, that sounds a little funny. Like, why would they talk about Gollum's grandmother?
Well, why would they talk about his grandmother, Mark? Why not? Let's explain that. Why would they talk about his grandmother?
So, in The Lord of the Rings, when Gandalf explains what he's found out about Gollum in the, decades since, he says that Gollum lived with his grandmother, and his grandmother was like the matriarch of the proto-hobbits that Gollum lived with, or because Gollum is a proto-hobbit.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're like, okay, well, that's a significant detail in the Lord of the Rings. I just sort of assumed that wasn't in the first edition, but it is. And so that's a case of where Tolkien took a little random tidbit that he threw in there in the first edition and then made that more significant, because it is Gollum's grandmother that banishes him from his people. because of what he did, which is murdering his friend Deagle over the One Ring. But that's for another day.
We'll talk about that.
Right. But one thing that is interesting is that even in the first edition, the fact that he lives with his grandmother implies tragedy, right?
Yeah.
Because who lives with their grandparents?
People who lost their parents.
Orphans.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right? And like one of the most traditional automatic tragedies in all of human, literature is about orphans. Harry Potter's an orphan.
Spider-Man's an orphan.
Spider-Man's an orphan.
Bruce Wayne.
Peter Pan is an orphan. Bruce Wayne is an orphan. That's
He was like the orphan.
yeah, it's a common thing, right?
Yeah.
And so even though it doesn't say, "Hey, look, his parents died," it implies that. And so
Yeah.
there's like a little layer of tragedy, but also humanizes him because he lives with his grandma
Hobbitizes him.
or hobbitizes him. Yeah. So anyway, I always thought that was a really interesting thing that came up.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was in the original.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that's cool.
Like, I was reading that. I was like, wait a second. Some gears started. It was like 3 a.m. when I read that. So I was like tired. I was like, oh, the gears are turning. Choo choo.
But anyway, so then the next major change is the terms of the riddle game. So in the current edition, if Gollum wins, he eats Bilbo. If Bilbo wins, Gollum will show Bilbo the way out.
Yes.
Right? But here is where the big, big change comes. In the first edition, if Gollum wins, he still eats Bilbo. But if Bilbo wins, Gollum will give him a present. And that is all it says. He'll give him his present. And Bilbo agrees to it because, well, otherwise this creature might attack him.
I like presents and I like not being dead.
Right. And so Bilbo's like, okay, fine, whatever, right?
Yeah.
So the stakes are very different. In the current edition, the revised edition, the one that everyone has read, Bilbo winning not only saves his life, but lets him escape. But in the first edition, winning spares his life, but the present is kind of unwanted, unknown, and irrelevant.
Yeah.
Or at least as Bilbo, thinks, right?
I mean, little to his knowledge.
Yeah. So now we get to the riddle game. And in both versions, it's exactly the same. Bilbo has accidentally asked, "What have I got in my pocket?" And Gollum takes it to be a riddle. And after he guesses wrong 4 times, Gollum loses. But here's another big change. So I'm going to read first from the current edition, and then I'm going to read from the first edition. "Both wrong," cried Bilbo, very much relieved, and he jumped at once to his feet, put his back to the nearest wall, and held out his little sword. He knew, of course, that the riddle game was sacred and of immense antiquity, and even wicked creatures were afraid to cheat when they played at it. But he felt he could not trust this slimy thing to keep any promise at a pinch. Any excuse would do for him to slide out of it, and after all, that last question had not been a genuine riddle according to the ancient laws. But at any rate, Gollum did not attack him at once. He could see the sword in Bilbo's hand. He sat still, shivering.
Ooh.
But now we're going to read the first edition. "Both wrong," cried Bilbo, very much relieved, and he jumped at once to his feet, put his back to the nearest wall, and held out his little sword. But funnily enough, he need not have been alarmed. For one thing, Gollum had learned long, long ago was never, never to cheat at the riddle game, which is a sacred one and of immense antiquity. Also, there was the sword. He simply sat and whispered. "What about the present?" asked Bilbo. Not that he cared very much. Still, he felt that he had won it pretty fairly, and in very difficult circumstances, too. "Must we give it the thing, Precious?" Yes, we must. We must fetch it, Precious, and give it to the present we promised." So Gollum paddled back to his boat, and Bilbo thought he had heard the last of him, but he had not.
Dun dun dun.
So notice the differences there. In the current edition, the one most people have read, Bilbo wins the game, puts his back to the wall, holds out the sword at Gollum, and says, "Yes, the riddle game is sacred, but I don't trust this guy." And it also goes into Gollum's head and says, yeah, Gollum wants to attack Bilbo right now, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Like their peace, the temporary peace of the riddle game has suddenly ended. But in the first edition, Bilbo still stands up, puts his back against the wall, points the sword at Gollum, and doesn't trust him. But the narrator says, but he could have trusted him because Gollum goes, oh, well, you won. I would rather eat you, essentially, but you won fair and square, so let me go get the present.
Yeah, it was so much more lighthearted.
Yeah, the tone is completely different.
Yeah, well, one feels like a kid's book. One is like, oh God.
Yeah, and it's interesting how little actually is changed in the words. Like it still uses the, the game is sacred and all that, but one, it's Bilbo thinking. In the revised edition, Bilbo was thinking that it's sacred, and Gollum might be held by those rules. But in the first edition, the nicer Gollum version, Gollum says, "Oh, shoot, I really want to eat this guy." But the riddle game is sacred. I dare not break it.
I'm not that hungry
I'm
anyway.
not that evil, right? So I need to get on with it. So it's really interesting of just how that little change is so important and makes so much of a difference.
It changed the whole tone of the story.
It really does. The tone just
and
is
then
100%
the implication
different.
it brings up for the future is just
Right. And another thing which is interesting, though, in the revised version, Bilbo's mistrust is well-founded, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because in Gollum's head, he still wants to eat him and is not, doesn't intend to keep his promise. But in the first edition, it kind of makes Bilbo out to be more of a jerk because it says, Bilbo immediately basically says, yeah, I don't trust this guy and I'm going to point my sword at him. But then the narrator says, yeah, but Gollum was totally trustworthy in this respect. He was going to follow through. And so it kind of makes Bilbo look a little bad, which is kind of interesting.
It does, because you usually don't think of him as, like, a bad guy.
No, he's a very good person.
I mean, Lord of the Rings, you see him getting a little darker, but that's just the corruption of the ring.
Yeah.
But you don't usually, it's not painted that light usually.
Mm-mm. And so it's, I don't know, that to me is really a fascinating change.
I would have happened to agree with that.
Mm-hmm. So after that scene takes place, in the current edition, Gollum leaves for his island to get the ring and use it to murder Bilbo, finds that it's lost, and chases after him. Right?
Yes.
But in the first edition, Gollum can't find the present at all and comes back to Bilbo and apologizes for cheating him out of a present. So now we'll read from both versions. So we'll start with the current. And with the current edition, there's a lot more, so I'm going to be sort of skipping around, but it'll give you the overall impression.
Yes, it will.
So this is Gollum. But it must wait. Yes, it must. We can't go up the tunnels so hasty. We must go and get some things first. Yes, things to help us. And then later on, my birthday present, he whispered to himself, as he had often done in the endless dark days. That's what we wants now. Yes, we wants it. He wanted it because it was a ring of power. And then it goes on to explain that it turns you invisible. My birthday present. It came to me on my birthday, my precious. So he had always said to himself. But who knows how Gollum came by that present ages ago in the old days when such things were still at large in the world. Perhaps even the master who ruled them could not have said. Gollum used to wear it at first, till it tired him, and then he kept it in a pouch next to his skin, till it galled him. And now usually he hid it in a hole in the rock on his island, and was always going back to look at it. And then later on, quite safe, yes, he whispered to himself. It won't see us, will it, my precious? No, it won't see us, and its nasty little sword will be useless. Yes, quite. That is what was in his wicked little mind as he slipped suddenly from Bilbo's side and flapped back to his boat and went off into the dark. And then Gollum goes to his island and doesn't find the ring because Bilbo has it. Where is it? Where is it? Bilbo heard him crying. Lost it is, my precious, lost, lost. Curse us, and crush us, my precious, is lost. So that's the end of... Oh, wait a minute. No, I'm sorry. Excuse me.
You're excused.
Yeah. So then the last part. So then Gollum goes back to Bilbo and starts putting two and two together. But you never guessed my last question, and you promised, said Bilbo. Never guessed, said Gollum. Then suddenly out of the gloom came a sharp hiss. What has it got in its pockets? Tell us that. It must tell us first. And then this is when Gollum's eyes become ever so murderous, and Bilbo runs out into the dark.
As one would.
As one would. So now this is the first edition where Gollum has promised to give him his present and goes back to the island. And just like in the current edition, it's gone. It's not there because, again, Bilbo has it. We haven't the present we promised, and we haven't even got it for ourselves. And then it continues. For Gollum came back and made a tremendous spluttering and whispering and croaking, and in the end Bilbo gathered that Gollum had a ring, a wonderful, beautiful ring, a ring that he had been given for a birthday present ages and ages before, in old days when such things were less uncommon. So Gollum actually explains what the ring is to Gollum, what the present was.
Gollum explains it to Bilbo.
Yeah, I'm sorry, to Bilbo.
Yes.
Yeah, on purpose. So, and then it continues on. I don't know how many times Gollum begged Bilbo's pardon. He kept on saying, "We are sorry. We didn't mean to cheat. We meant to give it to our only present if it won the competition." He even offered to catch Bilbo some nice juicy fish to eat as a consolation. Bilbo shuddered at the thought of it. "No, thank you," he said as politely as he could. He was thinking hard, and the idea came to him that Gollum must have dropped that ring sometime, and that he must have found it, and that he had the very ring in his pocket, but he had the wits not to tell Gollum. Finding's keeping, he said to himself, and being in a very tight place, I dare say he was right. Anyway, the ring belonged to him now. Never mind, he said. The ring would have been mine now, and if you had found it, so you would have lost it anyway, and I will let you off on one condition. Yes, what is it? What does it wish us to do, my precious? Help me get out of these places, said Bilbo.
Much different.
Much different.
Much different.
Much different. And you'll notice that line where the narrator mentions, how did Gollum get the ring? Well, maybe even the master that ruled them did not even know, of course, implying about Sauron from the Lord of the Rings. But notice how suspicious Gollum is in the revised version, and how it talks about how the ring had galled him and ate at him.
Well, yeah, because it didn't have powers.
Other than making you invisible.
Yeah,
it wasn't...
It wasn't one ring to rule them all.
No, it didn't have the soul of the devil's protege in it.
Yeah.
So, that's a little different.
That kind of makes a bit of a difference,
Yeah. But I mean, you see how different that is. Gollum coming in the first edition, coming to Bilbo and begging for his forgiveness, and oh no, and he tells him all about how great the present was and all that kind of thing, and how it would have been really cool. But then also notice that Bilbo is also a little more of a jerk here, because he doesn't tell him that, he could have made him feel better by saying, oh, you know what, I found this, it must have been yours, and I want it anyway.
Yeah. So he's like, no, finders keepers.
Yeah. And then he kind of cheats Gollum again by saying, well, I already got this thing that I would have won anyway by this game, but now I'm going to force something else from you and say, show me the way out, right?
Yeah.
But also, I want to point something else out, too. In the second edition, or in the revised edition, Bilbo was in far more danger, right? And he found it accidentally, and he kind of won it in kind of shady ways, and then was almost murdered over it. In the first edition, he finds it, he wins it, but Gollum wants him to have it. It is yours. You deserve it. You won the game. I'm so sorry I couldn't give it to you. On and on, right?
Yeah.
So it kind of makes it more Bilbo's because the person who had it wanted him to have it, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's important for later on, of course.
But of course.
Right. So now we're going to return to the revised edition, the one that we're all familiar with, or should be. And so as you remember that after Gollum starts chasing Bilbo, he runs off into the dark tunnels and trips on a rock, and the ring slips on his finger, and Gollum passes him by. He overhears Gollum's mutterings to himself about what the ring is, and they go off to the exit, and Gollum blocks the exit, waiting to catch Bilbo. So Gollum now suspects that Bilbo has the ring, and he's even more murderous than ever. And in this portion of it, we get to the point where Bilbo has his elf sword out, Sting, but it's not called Sting yet. and he's ready to strike at Bilbo. I mean,
Step-
strike at Gollum
Step,
to
step,
kill
step.
him. Yeah, out to kill him. So, and one of the most important events in all of Tolkien's Legendarium happens at this point. So now we're going to read excerpts from that portion of the story. Bilbo crept away from the wall more quietly than a mouse, but Gollum stiffened at once, and sniffed, and his eyes went green. He hissed softly but menacingly. He could not see the hobbit, but now he was on the alert, and he had other senses that the darkness had sharpened, hearing and smell. And then it continues. Bilbo almost stopped breathing, and went stiff himself. He was desperate. He must get away out of this horrible darkness, while he had any strength left. He must fight. He must stab the most foul thing, put its eye out, kill it. It meant to kill him. No, not a fair fight. He was invisible now. Gollum had no sword. Gollum had not actually threatened to kill him, or tried to yet. And he was miserable, alone, lost. A sudden understanding, a pity mixed with horror, welled up in Bilbo's heart. A glimpse of endless, unmarked days without light or hope of betterment. Hard stone, cold fish, sneaking and whispering. All these thoughts passed in a flash of a second. He trembled. And then quite suddenly in another flash, as if lifted by a new strength and resolve, he leaped. So then Bilbo leaps over Gollum instead of stabbing him. Gollum threw himself backwards and grabbed as the hobbit flew over him, but too late. His hand snapped on thin air, and Bilbo, falling fair on his sturdy feet, sped off down the new tunnel. He did not turn to see what Gollum was doing. There was a hissing and cursing almost at his heels at first, and then it stopped. All at once there came a blood-curdling shriek, filled with hatred and despair. Gollum was defeated. He dared go no further. He had lost his prey, and lost, too, the only thing he had ever cared for, his precious. The cry brought Bilbo's heart to his mouth, but still he held on. Now faint as an echo, but menacing, the voice came behind. Thief! 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 Baggins! We hates it! We hates it! We hates it forever. Damn. And now the first edition.
First edition.
So Gollum takes, says, okay, I can't give you the present, so I'll show you the way out. And on their way out, Bilbo decides to try on the ring to test it to see if what Gollum told him is true, and he finds out it makes him invisible. And then this happens. They get to the end of the tunnel, and then this is from the first edition. Here's the passage, he whispered. It must squeeze in and sneak down. We durst go with it, my precious. No, we durst, Gollum. So Bilbo slipped under the arch and said goodbye to the nasty, miserable creature, and very glad he was. He did not feel comfortable until he felt quite sure it was gone, and he kept his head out in the main tunnel, listening until the flip-flap of Gollum going back to his boat died away in the darkness. Then he went down the new passage. So
Not nearly as sad,
Well,
or
no.
tragic, or messed up, or anything like that.
Right, and before we get to the pity part, just notice how they're parting. In the revised version, it's thief, Baggins, we hates it forever. And in the revised version, it's essentially, okay, bye, toodle-doo.
It's like, have a good one, dude. I'll see you later.
Yeah, and Bilbo's kind of like, glad I'll never see that weirdo again. And then off he goes, right?
Yeah.
It's a completely different thing.
It changes the whole tone of the thing.
Right.
The chapter, that's what I meant to say.
The chapter of the story. I mean, their encounter is completely different. And now I want to go back to what is the most important part of of that segment from the revised edition, and that is Bilbo's inner monologue about not killing Gollum. Now, in both versions, but especially in the revised edition, whenever we enter Gollum's head, it's very simple thoughts. It's, we wants it, it's our precious, something about being nasty. It's very simple thoughts, either about desire or hatred or fear, right? Mm-hmm. But now I'm going to reread Bilbo's thoughts at the beginning of that little part. He was desperate. He must get away out of this horrible darkness while he had any strength left. He must fight. He must stab the most foul thing, put its eye out, kill it. It meant to kill him. What does that sound like?
death.
It sounds like Gollum's thoughts.
It does,
right?
yeah.
I mean, like Bilbo's thoughts in this moment of danger.
They sound just like that little dude.
Yeah, I mean, with some very small changes, that could sound like Gollum's inner monologue.
It really could, though.
And basically, if you just made Gollum, translate those words and added more hisses and s's and us's,
Bagginses.
yeah, I mean, it would sound exactly like Gollum.
It does sound like Gollum's thoughts. I didn't even think about that until just now.
And notice how once Bilbo has these thoughts, these murderous, horrible thoughts, he suddenly turns to sympathy and pity and understanding. No, not a fair fight. He was invisible now. Gollum had no sword. Gollum had not actually threatened to kill him, or tried to yet, and he was miserable, alone, lost. A sudden understanding, a pity mixed with horror welled up in Bilbo's heart, a glimpse of endless, unmarked days without light or hope of betterment, hard stone, cold fish, sneaking and whispering. So, all in an instant, when Bilbo has thoughts like Gollum, he immediately identifies with him and feels bad for him. Mm-hmm. And if you think about it, Bilbo starts the chapter, he's alone, he doesn't know where he is, he's in the dark on hard stone. And that's exactly how Bilbo pictures Gollum's life. He is alone, he lives on stone, he's in the darkness, and he only eats cold fish, or goblins when he can catch them.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, like, Bilbo's version of hell, in a way, is Gollum's life.
That's deep.
Yeah, right? And in that in that moment of understanding and sympathy with Gollum, his thought turns to mercy and pity. Mm-hmm. And remember how we're talking about how a lot of the changes make Gollum more pitiable, but also more loathsome, mm-hmm. or vice versa. Well, in a way, Bilbo in the first edition was kind of more of a jerk. You know how we initially suspected Gollum, even though Gollum was going to fulfill his word. Well, here, Bilbo is made worse because he's made even worse in a way because he was about to kill Gollum, but also it's more understandable because Gollum is more dangerous.
I mean, it seems more retaliatory than him just being a dick.
Right. But then also it makes Bilbo greater because in that moment of fear and true utility of being angry, it wouldn't make sense. It is logical to kill this creature that was mean and out to get him, mm-hmm. and was in his way. But instead he decides on the merciful thing.
Yeah.
And that, of course, drastically changes the tone of not only the chapter, but has major consequences for the character and later events.
Like the whole shebang gets changed.
Yeah, right? So now, so anyway, that's sort of the end of the changes. And there's a couple other ones. Like, there's a minor one where at the end of both versions, when Gollum bids him farewell, it's not at the very door to lead out of the mountains. It like leads to essentially like a goblin guardhouse at mm-hmm. the end of the tunnel. And Bilbo in the in the first edition, has already doesn't have his ring on now, and the goblins see him. He puts on his ring, he slips past the goblins, and he escapes.
Yeah.
But in the revised version, the version that we have all read, it talks about how Bilbo still has the ring on, remember? Because he leapt over Gollum while invisible.
Never took it off.
He never takes it off. But as he gets nearer the goblins, it mentions how the ring plays a trick on its new master and falls off his finger into his pocket, and then the goblins see him. And then he puts it back on and squeezes through and escapes. Mm-hmm. But you see how that change makes the ring more ominous?
Yeah, and like its own entity almost.
Right, because the ring can kind of make decisions, mm-hmm. and not far planning decisions, but still decisions. And so like that little change is really important. Like the actions are still the same. He's still seen by the goblins, and then he puts on the ring and escapes.
But the small implication changes the whole overarching aspect of it.
Exactly. It's one of those things where if you read The Hobbit first and you read that little passage, you wouldn't notice it at all. But after reading Lord of the Rings, you read that passage again about the ring playing a trick on him. You go, yeah. You're going, I see. Yeah. All right. So.
Oh, the cat did not like that noise.
Did not like that noise?
No.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, our mascot, the Mathom House mascot, is my cat Mo. That's decided just now. He's chilling with us while Mark is getting his papers ready, getting his notes. Gonna get your notes, Mark. Come on, Mark. You're gonna get your notes.
I know. I'm wasting time.
Always time for Rick and Morty references.
I mean, pretty much. So now I want to turn to the hints in both The Hobbit itself and in The Lord of the Rings about these changes.
Okay.
So, for instance, every copy of The Hobbit published since the revisions has a little like opening front little page, and it says, amongst other things, in this reprint, several minor inaccuracies, most of them noted by readers, have been corrected. More important is the matter of Chapter 5. There, the true story of the ending of the riddle game, as it was eventually revealed, under pressure, by Bilbo to Gandalf, is now giving according to the Red Book, in place of the version Bilbo first gave to his friends, and a portent of great significance. It does not, however, concern the present story, and those who in this edition make their first acquaintance with Hobbit lore need not trouble about it. Its explanation lies in the history of the ring, as it was set out in the chronicles of the Red Book of Westmarch, and is now told in The Lord of the Rings. So basically, if you're reading The Hobbit for the first time, you go, what? Like,
Yeah.
what changes? What
when
does that
I saw
mean?
that, I was like, okay, whatever.
Right. And also a little background, when it talks about the Red Book or the Red Book of Westmarch. So the conceit of Tolkien's works is that all of these things happened in the real past, in an ancient, distant past. And that the material that we now call The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and the Silmarillion are works translated by Tolkien that he basically found in a dusty old medieval library somewhere. And that those works are based on items that Bilbo, Frodo, and Sam wrote. And then later historians and other people added things to it. That's why, for instance, in Lord of the Rings, it'll like talk about an event and then say, in later years, someone wrote a poem about this, and then it'll talk about the poem. Well, that poem was written years after the people that were in that story died. So it's sort of like reading an old history book or like an old chronicle.
Yeah, for sure. Like, even glancing at the Silmarillion, that's the vibe you get from it.
Right, and the Silmarillion is essentially the Old Testament of It is. Because it goes from the creation of the universe through several thousand years before the Lord of the Rings. But anyway, so that is what it's talking about when it talks about the Red Book. Now, in the prologue of the Lord of the Rings, it also gives a synopsis of the events of The Hobbit. When it comes to the events concerning Gollum and the riddle game, the narrator goes on to say, Gandalf, however, disbelieved Bilbo's first story as soon as he heard it, and he continued to be very curious about the ring. Eventually, he got the true tale out of Bilbo after much questioning, which for a while strained their friendship. But the wizard seemed to think the truth important. Though he did not say so to Bilbo, he also thought it important and disturbing to find that the good hobbit had not told the truth from the first, quite contrary to his habit. So again, it's using... And see, this is what makes Tolkien the master of the retcon, is that Tolkien knew he was retconning, and instead of just pretending that the retcon never happened, that it was always the way that the revision is, he used that in his story. He said the fact that there had to be a revision, that Bilbo lied and told this simplified, happy Gollum giving up the ring story, made it part of the plot, that Bilbo lied, and that was a sign that the ring was evil, because the ring sort of made him or influenced him to lie. So that is just super cool.
That is super duper cool.
It is. And then also, again, these are more excerpts from The Lord of the Rings. In A Long Expected Party, which is the first chapter of The Lord of the Rings, Gandalf is talking to Frodo, Bilbo's heir, and Bilbo has already left. and Gandalf is they're talking about Bilbo and leaving him the ring. What do you know already? That's what Gandalf asks. Only what Bilbo told me. I have heard his story, how he found it, and how he used it, on his journey, I mean. Which story, I wondered, said Gandalf. Oh, not what he told the dwarves and put in his book, said Frodo. He told me the true story soon after I came to live here. He said you had pestered him till he told you. So I had better know too. No secrets between us, Frodo, he said, but they are not to go any further. It's mine anyway. That's interesting, said Gandalf. Well, what did you think of it all? If you mean inventing all that about a present, well, I thought the true story much more likely, and I couldn't see the point of altering it at all. So again, even the characters within the story are basically saying, yeah, the revised version sounds way more likely, is more menacing, is more interesting. But they're also taking into account that there had to be, or there was a new version or an original version into account, and they are like, that seems ominous and strange. So, yeah.
That's a cool little throwback.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And that's mostly what I wanted to talk about.
You got token bombed.
I did, yeah, token bomb.
Token bomb. That's what I'm calling this segment.
Okay.
Token bomb.
But I also, before we close, I wanted to talk about something that's in the Lord of the Rings that discusses the pity part, where Bilbo has pity on Gollum. And now in the Lord of the Rings, Gandalf has just told Frodo that he has the One Ring, that the devil's protege is now after him and wants to take the ring and kill everybody he knows. Not so good, right?
No.
He's in a tight fix.
Just a little bit.
Right. And he's also found out that Gollum, this basically story time creature from his childhood that Bilbo has been telling about his whole life, like this villain, has now been caught by Sauron, the bad guy, and has been tortured to reveal all this information that he knows about Bilbo and the ring. And so if Gollum had just suddenly died or had not been caught, Sauron wouldn't have never known that Frodo has the ring, right? Mm-hmm. So this is Frodo's reaction. But this is terrible, cried Frodo. Far worse than the worst that I imagined from your hints and warnings. O Gandalf, best of friends, what am I to do? For now I am really afraid. What am I to do? What a pity that Bilbo did not stab that vile creature when he had a chance. Pity? It was pity that stayed his hand. Pity and mercy, not to strike without need. And he has been well rewarded, Frodo. Be sure that he took so little hurt from the evil, and escaped in the end, because he began his ownership of the ring so, with pity. I am sorry, said Frodo, but I am frightened, and I do not feel any pity for Gollum. You have not seen him, Gandalf broke in. No, and I don't want to, said Frodo. I can't understand you. Do you mean to say that you and the elves have let him live on after all these horrible deeds? Now, at any rate, he is as bad as an orc, and just an enemy. He deserves death. Deserves it? I dare say he does. Many that live deserve death, and some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them? Then do not be too eager to deal out death in judgment, for even the very wise cannot see all ends.
Damn Gandalf.
Right. And, Frodo's reaction is perfectly understandable.
That was my reaction earlier.
Right. You're like, oh my God, if someone told you that, you had a murderous guy that's coming after you, you wouldn't be happy about the person that snitched on you, essentially.
Yeah, yeah.
But, and Gandalf does not disagree that Gollum is a villain, but he also says, don't be too quick to just want this guy who is a villain to die. You need to have judgment and understand that Bilbo's pity for him not only was the morally correct thing, but he was rewarded for it, because Bilbo made that moral decision not to kill Gollum, and that made the ring not have as big of a hold on him as it did, because he began his possession of the ring with pity and mercy and understanding rather than fear and hatred. Mm-hmm. And that allowed all the good things and the victory that happens in The Lord of the Rings to occur. Because otherwise, Bilbo would have turned into Gollum himself. He would have become a second Gollum.
He would have.
Yeah. And that would have been bad. And yeah. But
That would not have been good.
I just think that is so brilliant, and how he used the revisions to tell the story in The Lord of the Rings, and how he used The Hobbit, the revisions of The Hobbit, and the fact that he decided to revise The Hobbit, and integrated them in the story. And I think that is just so amazing. And
because it is amazing.
It is amazing. It's so neat. And it makes it even cooler having been able to read the original version for the first time and just see what changes were made and how that changes the story.
When did you get to read the original version for the first time?
Just like a month ago.
So when you bought the new version like a month ago.
Right. And I had heard about it for years, and I knew the general scope of it. But again, there are a couple books that you can buy that are like the annotated Hobbit, and a couple other ones that sort of set it aside in notes and things, but you couldn't buy the original edition as is.
Until now.
Until last year. So again, if you are interested in it, look up The Hobbit first facsimile first edition. That's what it's called.
We'll also have the thing posted on Facebook too if you don't want to buy it.
Right, or you can just want to read that in there.
It is pretty cool though. I borrowed Mark's copy of it.
It's beautiful.
It is.
Yeah, because it all has Tolkien's original drawings in it.
Yeah, I didn't read through it. I read the internet version, but I flipped through it just to see what it was, and I liked it.
Yeah, it's pretty. If you are any kind of Tolkien fan or have read the book before, or just really like pretty books,
just buy it.
Just buy it.
Buy The Hobbit. There's a few pretty.
It's like $20. Get it.
Like I have a leather bound edition of The Hobbit with gold pages on it. Like they have a lot of cool versions of it. It's worth owning.
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, those are my thoughts.
I liked your thoughts, Mark.
Oh, I appreciate it. At least there's one person.
That's what I'm here for. All right, well, we're going to take a quick coffee break. It's going to be about 10, 15 minutes for us, about 15 seconds for you guys. We will see you soon.
Bye.
Bye. And we're back.
We're back.
Did you miss us?
I didn't.
You didn't miss me?
No, because you're a foot and a half away from me.
I mean, we spent the whole break together and you didn't miss me.
No, I didn't.
So what are you talking about now, Mark?
We are talking about the Legend of Zelda series.
Da, 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 da.
Don't go alone. Take this.
Zelda is one of my favorite games.
I mean, it's definitely one of the classic series.
I think it's tied with Pokemon for my all-time favorite.
And you love your Pokemon.
I do love my Pokemon.
Mm-hmm. You have it everywhere.
I really do. Car, belt,
case,
DS case. Actually,
jacket.
I do have a Zelda case too.
Oh, okay.
It's like one of Link's pouches, but it didn't fit the charger.
Oh.
And nor did it fit any games. So
so that's not sound very good.
So I gave you the better case.
Oh, okay. Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah, Mark's borrowing my DS right now to play all the games that he wouldn't have played.
Yeah.
And he is having a good time.
I am.
So, Mark.
Yes.
Very, very, very important question.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite Zelda game? Go.
That would be Wind Waker by far.
Why the Wind Waker?
Well, because it came out during the GameCube era, which was sort of the height of my video game playing. So that's one reason.
So when you were late teens?
Yeah, like late high school, early college. And also, I just love the art style, the simple cell shading, and the like how everything almost looked like it was painted and carved out of wood and simple shapes. I just really liked that a lot. And I really liked the sailing theme. I thought that was really interesting.
That was
and different.
So fun.
And I mean, this is one of those things, and probably diehard Zelda fans would grimace at me, but one of the problems I have about a lot of games in the Zelda variety is that I feel sometimes if I don't play it consistently, I forget where I am in the quest.
Oh, that happens all the time.
Right. And I felt because of the island nature of it, it was easier for me to sort of keep track of what I needed to do and what was going on.
Yeah, for sure.
Because you're like, oh, I'm on this island, and so I need to deal with this. Or it would say, you need to find this island with this object on it, so I would go there. I don't know. I just felt like I was more on top of the story in that one.
Yeah, for sure.
So how about you, Mitchell? What is your favorite Zelda game?
Majora's Mask.
Yes, and I have just played it a little bit on the 3DS. So why is that your favorite?
Before we talk about that,
Right.
I was 8 years old when I got my first GameCube in 2003.
Oh, God.
Just want to put that out there.
To make me feel even older than I am.
I was 8 years old.
God.
So, Majora's Mask is my favorite Zelda game. Why, you ask? Because it's good.
Okay. Well, I mean, most of the Zelda games have like a theme or a little addition to it. Like, for instance, Wind Waker is you control the wind and you sail, but what's Majora's Mask?
You have these different masks that give you different powers. So Majora's Mask, it's a sequel to Ocarina of Time. You're trying to find your little fairy friend that's obnoxious as fuck, but you got to go find her because I don't know why.
Hey, listen!
Oh, God. But yeah, so he's finding her then. He ends up finding a Skull Kid with Majora's Mask on, which is a mask just full of evil. And then he curses him and turns him into like a little tree man, which is called the Deku. And then he goes through there, finds the Happy Mask salesman from Ocarina of Time.
That guy's creepy too.
That's the point. That's the whole game. It's just really creepy and eerie.
Uh-huh.
So like you gotta go use these different masks to save the world, because the world's ending in 3 in-game days. The moon is going to come down and kill everybody.
And that moon is creepy as hell.
It is.
It has like this giant, like, it has like teeth and it has like a giant smile on it. Oh.
Have the moon crashed? Yeah.
No.
It's scary.
I mean, no, because I keep resetting the time. So.
Yeah, so even if the moon falls, it still resets the time anyway. You don't lose.
Oh, okay. I get it.
Yeah, so you have 3 in-game days and then you have to reset it afterwards because you keep going back in time to do the dungeons and then fight Majora. Which is sad, man. Like Link does all these things and then they forget about him.
I mean, isn't that kind of what happens every time to a degree?
No, but like even like he's going to help people, then they forget that you've done things for them.
I see. Like within the minor quests.
Within the game, like there's a side thing when you have to like go find all the kids and they give you the notebook. Like you befriended the kids, then after the 3 days they don't know who you are and they ask you to befriend them again. It's like everything Link does is almost for nothing, and he's the only person who knows that he's helping people.
Right, and like that was interesting, and like whenever you reset, you keep I would say your major items like maps and weapons and things, but you lose like all of your like Deku seeds or your rupees.
If you don't put
if
you don't put your money in the bank, you lose it.
Oh, that's why there's a bank. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, so the bank's there to keep your money.
Ah.
How far are you in that game?
I'm not sure, but I'm exploring the swamp right now.
Okay, so you're have you put the princess in a bottle yet? I'll take that as a no.
I'm sorry, I just had a Christina Aguilera song in my head, which is never a good thing. But okay, no, I haven't gotten that part yet.
So there's minor spoiler, there's a Deku princess. To rescue her, you need to put her in a bottle to like take her places.
Seems like a jerk move.
It is, but it's better than like in Ocarina of Time when you had to carry. Remember the fish dungeon when you had to carry the Zora princess around?
Oh yeah. Okay,
so
that sounds familiar.
It's better than that.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, it's a really dark, messed up game.
Yeah, and it's interesting, and like when at least again I only have one mask so far, which is the Deku mask, and like what that gives you is that you can shoot like magic bubbles at people.
I mean, it turns you into a Deku,
right? And you can also like sink into these like fern plants that can launch you up into the air.
Yeah.
So like they give you different abilities.
And there's other masks do different things. Like there's a Goron mask that turns you into a Goron, and then like with you have the ocarina, but every instrument changes with a different mask too.
Yeah, because like when you're the Deku, it's like these like horns that come out from like brass horns that come out from.
Then when you're the Goron, you get drums.
Makes
you're the Zora, you have an electric guitar.
Okay, so I'm assuming that's your favorite.
Yeah, and then there's like the different masks, like the bunny hood, which you put it on, you can walk faster, which is actually really important in that game.
I would think so. I can see that being useful.
And like there's different masks that like help you do different things. Like there's it's called Kamaru's mask. It's like helps you do a dance with these people, and then they give you a life container if you do it with them.
Okay,
it's cool. It's really different. There hasn't been a game like that before, and there hasn't really been one like that since.
Now I know this might be a spoiler, but is Ganon show up in that one?
No,
that is weird.
Yeah, so a lot of people think that it might not even be real.
Oh, that it's like a dream.
Yeah, because it's in Termina, which is not Hyrule. But there's like parallels. Like there's the ranch from Ocarina of Time. There's all these things from Ocarina of Time with just slightly different names.
Well, and even like the music is same. Like when you go into a store, it has the same like shop music playing or different things like that.
Yeah, so like the big theory
It
is
has
that,
the same morning music that comes on.
yeah, so like the big thing is like they think Link's just knocked out. It's just all happening in his head. That's a big theory. Yeah, you're fighting Skull Kid and Majora's Mask the whole time.
Okay.
You're not Ganon. So I think it's one of the few games Ganon isn't in at all.
Okay.
Except for maybe Minish Cap, I don't think he's in either.
Okay.
But then there's even if Ganon's not in there, Vadi's usually in those ones. So
The bodies?
Vadi,
Oh, okay. Okay.
have you played any of those ones?
No, I have not.
Okay, well that's a good place to start. What games haven't you played?
Well, the ones I'd be easier to say
Or
which
what-
ones
what
I
ha-
have
what have you
played.
played?
So my first Zelda game I ever played was on my aunt's and NES, and when I was growing up because I never had an NES. Sad.
But you had a SNES, so you're actually winning.
I guess. But she had the second Zelda game, which is The Adventure of Link. And that's kind of the weird one where it has the overtop map, but then when you're in towns and when you're in combat, it's a side scroller.
Well, it wasn't weird at the time though, because it was the second one. They didn't even.
True.
Well, they did know they wanted to go back to a top-down for Zelda 3, which was a Link to the Past, but
Right.
there wasn't even a precedent for
No,
how a Zelda
but
game
it's
should be
sort of-
yet.
It's considered to be sort of like an aberration or just an odd one.
It's my least favorite.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't remember getting very far in it. 'Cause,
Actually,
again,
that's-
I was a little kid. But...
That's a lie. It's not my least favorite, but
Oh, okay.
Four Swords on 3DS was my least favorite.
Oh, okay.
But that one was good. What else have you not? What else have you played?
So then then the next one I played was Ocarina of Time,
Classic.
which is the classic because that was the one that introduced the 3D world.
I mean, it's definitely overhyped these days. It's not the best, but at the time, it was like a game changer.
Well, I think things like GoldenEye and Mario 64 and other things, those were important games that showed what 3D gaming could be.
Yeah, it's super important at the time.
Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I beat that one, and yeah, that was amazing.
That was a really good one.
Mm-hmm. And then I've played Wind Waker, of course,
Duh.
and I have played about half, I think, of Twilight Princess, which I enjoyed the gameplay, but one of my criticisms of more modern games is I often think that the graphics are trying to be too realistic, and oftentimes I feel like it's not as clear or crisp as it should be.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just had a hard time getting into it.
It looks a lot better on the Wii U.
Oh, I'm sure
if you
it
haven't
does.
played that one yet.
I'm sure it does.
And I like how they're not doing that anymore, Zelda-wise.
Exactly. And then now I have Breath of the Wild for Switch, and I do like the art style in that one, but I haven't gotten very far in it. I haven't played in a couple weeks. But
It's not my favorite.
no, and and it actually gives me an idea for a future Zelda game, so I think we should talk about that later.
Yes. Breath of the Wild was good, but it also seemed a little lazy to me.
How so?
It seemed like they took your classic Western RPG, like your Skyrim, your Witcher, your Fallout.
Mm-hmm.
They copy-pasted all the gameplay into that, put it into Zelda's world.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they took away dungeons,
Yeah.
and then they just made it a WRPG, which is still fun.
Yeah.
Like, I loved Skyrim. Oblivion's great. I just played through Horizon Zero Dawn. I'm playing Monster Hunter World right now. It's all fun, but it's not Zelda to me.
Well, I mean, I think what you're talking about is like the elements of where your weapons like fall apart after a while, so you have to find new ones.
See, that's the only RPG I played that does that.
Okay.
I mean, Fallout does to a degree, but they don't degrade nearly as fast as they do in Breath of the Wild. And then in Fallout, you can fix them.
Okay. You think you would run into blacksmiths or something, and you pay a couple rupees, and they fix your sword.
Until you get the Master Sword, you got to find a sword, use it for 10 minutes, find another one.
That has gotten me in trouble a couple times.
And then even when you have the Master Sword, you can only use it X amount of times before it needs to recharge, and it's unusable for 10 minutes.
Ooh.
So like you use it, it says your Master Sword is unusable now.
Ugh.
And it's like, well, what's the point of having the Master Sword?
And the other parts of it is where like you collect like plants and like minerals and crystals and things, and then you use that to like trade things and sell things and make food.
Yeah, the
and potions.
The crafting in that game is really good.
It's interesting. I could see maybe it getting old after a while, but maybe that's just me.
Well, I put enough time into it collectively to to still be okay with the crafting.
Okay.
I think that's one of the places where the game shines the most.
Okay. And I do have to say the one thing that's interesting about Breath of the Wild, well, two aspects so far, is that it really does feel like you are in a natural environment. Like,
It really does.
You will, like, walking through the long grass, and then you'll see, like a fawn's head peek up.
Yeah.
And, like, little critters run around, and the wind in the trees, and the light, changing of light, and how the mountains rear up, and, like, it really feels like you're exploring this real place.
Yeah.
And that's really cool. And I also like sort of the survival aspect of it, that you are in the wild, as in the title. And, it's the most natural world, ask Zelda.
So much, lots of nature.
Yeah.
It is good. Like, as far as video games go, it's a great game, but it doesn't feel like a Zelda game to me. The only thing that Zelda is the story. Gameplay-wise, like, there's the little shrines, and then there's the 4 mythical beasts, which are still, it's like mini dungeons, but they all look the same when you get into them.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is, like, you get these sort of magical powers, like you have sort of like a magnetic thing, and like you can freeze time briefly, and and that they're introduced fairly quickly.
Yeah, within the first hour of the game, you got them.
Pretty much, yeah. But then you use them to solve the mini dungeons, and I'm kind of curious of why they went the mini dungeon route. I wonder what the reasoning behind that was.
I do not know, but I didn't like it.
I could see them doing like where they had, let's say, a ratio of 50-50, where you had a bunch of little mini ones, and then every once in a while you had a big one. I think that would have been fine.
I would have been fine with just like 4 big dungeons. Like, he doesn't have to be like Twilight Princess where there's like 15 dungeons to do. Majora's Mask only has 4.
Oh, okay.
And that's a phenomenal game.
And is that representing like the 4 different races and all that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not like 3 of the races and then like the moon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
but yeah, like it felt like they could have done more with it than they did. Like, it just felt like a Skyrim clone almost.
Okay.
You haven't played Skyrim yet, have you?
No, not really.
Well, when you play it, you'll see. It's a game you like. We will podcast on that when you play it.
Okay.
Because it's got a good story, dragons and stuff.
Okay. Well, what ones have you played that I have not played, Mitchell?
Pretty much all of them.
Okay.
Actually, I don't even let me pull the list up real quick. I have it in front of me. Let's see. So, Skyward Sword I played. I'm just going through chronological order. Minish Cap, I actually just beat that. That was a really fun one.
What's the theme of that one?
So like you're wearing a little hat, and and like the hat has a bird on it, and then it turns you big or small depending.
Ah.
So like it's like there's the evil guy Vadi took the 4 sword, and then there's little creatures called the Bakori. It's like a little race about the size of like your thumb, and they're helping you like get the sword back. And then when you put the hat on, you can turn tiny.
Oh, so like you get into little nicks and crannies and things like that. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, it's a top-down like 16-bit GBA game.
Okay.
But it's really fun. And played 4 Swords a little bit. First 4 Swords was okay.
Is that the one where like, they have different colored links running around?
Yeah, that's the 4 Swords series.
Okay.
I've been playing the 4 Swords on the GameCube. Found an emulator for that. That's really fun. It's different than like there's not really dungeons. It has levels. Like, you go through a level, you got to get X amount of Triforce shards to power up your sword to beat the boss.
Is that more of an action-y game in a way? Okay.
It's not really puzzly. It's more finding different like formations to get through the level in. It's almost a platformer.
Okay.
Like a top-down platformer, if that makes sense.
It does. It's
fun.
Okay.
It's different enough to be fresh, but it's still Zelda. Like, you're going through, like, you go through Hyrule Castle. It looks like a Link to the Past.
Okay.
It's cool. I played. Majora's Mask is good. There's 3 timelines in Zelda after Ocarina of Time. So it goes like first one is Skyward Sword, then Minish Cap, 4 Swords, Ocarina of Time. Then there's 3 outcomes in Ocarina of Time you can get. You can lose against Ganon, the final boss. Then you get like Hyrule's Decline storyline, which is like a Link to the Past, which is amazing. You ever played that one?
Nope.
Oh, Mark.
That's the third one. That's the one for Super Nintendo.
That is the Super Nintendo one. There's Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages. Those were the Game Boy ones. Did not play those.
Did not play those.
Those are the only ones I haven't played. Link's Awakening, I played a little bit of as another Game Boy one. That was okay. Then A Link Between Worlds came after that. Really liked that one.
What was special about that one?
It was another top-down thing like Link to the Past, same overworld, but you can turn into a painting on the wall.
Oh, that's the one that I've started a little.
Yeah, you
bit.
have that
okay,
one right
I couldn't
now,
remember
yeah.
the name.
Yeah, so like that's where you like a painting and like use that to solve puzzles.
Okay.
That's actually they get really creative with that. It's really fun.
Okay, I'm looking forward to playing more of that one.
Yeah, you definitely should. It's one of my favorites.
Okay.
Then there's Triforce Heroes came after that. Hated that game.
Why and what was
It's just like
different
it's
about
the
it?
DS. It's like a gimmicky like 4-person game. There's not really a story to it. You're just running around fighting each other.
Huh.
There's like a 2-3 hour long story.
Huh.
So it counts. I got it from the library. It wasn't very good.
Okay.
Then the first 2 Zelda games are in that timeline. The Legend of Zelda, Adventure Link.
Mm-hmm.
Played a little bit of the original one. It's very confusing.
Why is it confusing?
It doesn't tell you what to do. You just kind of get thrown in there.
Oh, okay.
And then you just they expect you to know what to do. So that's why like you get Nintendo Power
Right.
to help you
Back in the
learn
day.
how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Game Genie, if you know what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I played a little bit of it with the strategy guide. It's fun,
Okay.
but there's definitely better Zelda games out there.
Well, that was the first one. They were working out the kinks.
They were. It's still a classic.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's if at the end of Ocarina of Time, if Link wins and stays a child, because Ocarina of Time you go between being a child and a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
So if he stays a child, you get Majora's Mask in the timeline. Really fun one. Mark's been playing it. My favorite. Then you get Twilight Princess.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't like that in the Wii at all.
No.
The motion controls were terrible, but they did an HD remaster on the Wii U. That was fun. The gimmick in that is that Link turns into a wolf.
Yeah, and like you go into like this negative verse kind of thing.
Yeah, that was cool. It came with an amiibo of Wolf Link.
Ooh.
And then in Breath of the Wild, you can put Wolf Link on there. Then you have a little Wolf Link helper.
Aw.
And then if you put him in Twilight Princess HD, it opens up a new dungeon.
Oh, that's cool.
And then the further you go in the dungeon determines how strong Wolf Link is in Breath of the Wild.
Ooh. That's pretty clever, actually.
Yeah, it's like a 100-floor dungeon. It's really fun.
Whoa.
Then after that, you get Four Swords and Hyrule Adventure. Yeah, so that's Four Sword Adventure, which is what I've been playing through recently. That one's fun.
Mm-hmm.
That one's fun. Then then if Link stays an adult at the end of Ocarina of Time, you got Wind Waker.
Yeah.
It's like that's when Ganon. Oh, almost knocked my coffee over.
That'd been bad.
That would. I was like, oh no. It was so like that's when Ganon is revived after you beat him in Ocarina of Time. He comes back,
Mm-hmm.
and then he floods the world. There's no hero to stop him.
Mm-hmm.
So for whatever reason, Link isn't reincarnated. So the whole world floods, and that's why Wind Waker's water themed.
Yeah. Oh, wait. Okay, I have to talk about this. One of my favorite things in video games ever is when, in fairly early on in Wind Waker, when you visit the remnants of Hyrule Castle, and
That
it's like
was
frozen
so
in
cool.
time, and you see like this big battle going on between the Hyrule Knights and Ganon's minions, and they're all frozen in time. Oh my god, it is so
sweet.
awesome.
Isn't that when you find out that the boat is the king of Hyrule?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was really sweet. That's like the perfect game to me almost. Then after that, you have Phantom Hourglass, which is a direct sequel. So it's this DS title. You use the touchscreen to move Link. It was a little weird at first, but you get used to it. That one's fun. So it's like Link and Tetra going on an adventure
Oh,
with a dude who has a boat
okay.
because he doesn't have the king boat anymore.
Oh.
So it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Then 50 years later, and 50 years later, discover a new continent. So they move there.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's Spirit Tracks, where the gimmick is that you have a train.
That sounds fun.
It's okay.
No, it sounds cool.
So you have a train, then you like Zelda trapped in armor as your partner.
Oh, okay.
So it's fine. It's very short. You can beat it in like 5 hours.
Oh, okay.
It is what it is. It's fine. I don't have that much good to say about it,
Okay.
but it's a game. It's a game. So, and then we don't know where Breath of the Wild fits in, because there's evidence that it could be like super early, but there's also evidence that it could be super late.
Right, because I feel like he's older in
Yeah,
that
and
one.
then-
Like, so it's not his stays as a child timeline, right?
And then a problem is that there's Rito and Zora.
Okay.
And that, or the Rito are, there's no Zora. Yeah, there are Rito and Zora, which doesn't make sense because after the Great Flood, the Zora evolved into the Rito.
Ah.
So, which are the Rito are Zora are like the fish people, the Rito are the bird people. So, like, why are they coexisting? Rito are the Zora.
Maybe it's a split where like one portion of the population stayed that way, and then mutants evolved into the bird version.
Yeah, but then the Sheikah are still alive though. In like all the other games, the Sheikah are extinct.
Right.
So I don't like in every other game. Sheikah, like Impa was the only Sheikah. But I think even in Skyward Sword, all the Sheikah are extinct. So that makes me want to say it's like pre-Skyward Sword almost.
But how?
Because they don't mention the Kingdom of Hyrule at all
in Skyward Sword?
In Breath of the Wild.
Really? Are you sure?
Did they mention it?
I thought
oh wait, they do because there's that castle.
Yeah.
So like that because Hyrule wasn't founded until after Skyward Sword when Link and Zelda.
Oh.
Because like Link and Zelda are living in like flying islands in the sky. Then the whole thing is you go down and then like you live like they're civilizing. So yeah, colonizing the world.
Okay.
So I don't know where it would fit in.
Well, Breath of the Wild can't be the first one because it mentions the fact that he is a reincarnated hero.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm thinking it might be just really late because like there's a lot of technology in it.
That's true.
And then it's either in its own timeline or it takes place super late because like the Sheikah are able to repopulate themselves.
Yeah, that's possible.
Because like there's 4 Sheikah villages in Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, I think I heard that. Yeah.
So
and they had those like octopus robot things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so like, that's more advanced.
The Guardians.
Yeah, with the like laser beams.
So I have no idea. That game just ruins everything.
No.
It's a pretty good game. Well, so Wind Waker's your favorite.
Yeah.
Second favorite. Let's just make it top 5 of them.
Okay, well, probably. Well, I haven't played nearly as many as you, but probably Wind Waker, Ocarina of Time. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I could do any more. Oh, wait, one other game I've played is the what was it called?
Hylian Adventure.
No, the Link's crossbow training game for Wii. That was kind of fun. It was like a light gun game.
That was just the
kind of like Duck Hunt with Zelda.
That's when like had the thing you put the controller in. That was like a gimmicky game.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of silly and fun.
You ever play the hack and slash one?
Oh, Hyrule Warriors.
I think that's what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah, I played. I don't own it, but I played it for Wii U. That was fun.
That was a fun one. I liked it.
Yeah, it wasn't like a real Zelda game, but just sort of a pick up and play and have fun. Yeah, it was good.
It was a good Zelda game though. I must say I did enjoy it. Good game. I'm trying my top 5. That's a tough one. That's a toughie.
Well, Majora's Mask, right?
Majora's Mask is number 1. Skyward Sword, I'd have to say number 2. I'm looking at the list right now.
Making little clicky noises.
See, that will deter people from listening. If you stayed after listening to that, thank you. Diminished Cap is probably my 3rd favorite.
Okay.
That's the Wind Waker number 4. Then I'm really liking Four Sword Adventures right now.
Okay.
That's been a really, really good one.
Well, like that's another thing. Like, so I guess if you had to break Zelda down, there is what I would call like the side quest aspect of the game where like you're rounding up chickens or delivering mail for people or reuniting 2 like former lovers or something.
Yeah.
And then there is the action part of it, where you're battling bosses and, minions and like the little pig people and everything. And then there's the dungeon part, and then there's like the exploration part.
What was your favorite dungeon you've played?
Oh, God.
Because there's so many good ones.
It's been so long.
I know mine.
Okay.
Skyward Sword. There's the Lanryu mining facility. So that's where it's a desert theme. You're in there. There are these stones that go back in time to when the facility it was like a big technological mining facility. When you hit the stone, it made that area go back in time.
Oh.
And it made all the technology work. So like you're going through like getting the stones in the right spot to make the whole factory work.
Okay, that sounds kind of cool.
I think the final boss was a robot pirate.
Robot pirate.
Yeah, so that is definitely my favorite dungeon of any Zelda game.
Okay. I guess if I had to pick, again, it's been so long since I played most of these, but there was one in Wind Waker where I think you're inside the Deku tree and you're trying to help him out. and it's sort of all about. I know it's very tree themed, but like you use the wind and you get this giant leaf which you use as a sail, like a parasail.
Yeah.
And you use that throughout the game, but you use that especially in this one. And I really like that because sometimes you use the wind to like move wind chimes around and different things like that to open doors. And I don't know, I thought that was really fun.
I really liked the first dungeon in Wind Waker, which was that fortress.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I mean, even though you go there twice, the first time you don't have any weapons.
No.
So you're like sneaking around trying to get out of there.
Oh, man, that reminds me of an Ocarina of Time where you're trying to sneak into the castle and go through the palace guards. Oh, that was so annoying. But it was fun.
They did it right in Wind Waker, I thought, the stealthy. Like you're walking the barrel.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was a good time.
And the pigs are like looking for you with the lamps.
Yeah.
The lighting in that was cool.
Wind Waker is just a great game. We could probably do a podcast on just that game alone if we wanted to.
Probably.
The only part I didn't like about the game was the end where you're like getting all the Triforce shards. That was a pain.
Oh, yeah.
They fixed it. They made it easier in the Wii U version though.
Did they have more teleportation sites or something?
They just made you had to get less.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think they cut the number in half, if I remember right. I could be remembering completely wrong, so don't quote me on that. But I remember that being a lot easier.
Okay.
You ever play the Wii U version yet?
No.
Do you ever do the GameCube version with a GBA link to it?
No, I didn't have a GBA.
Because
so.
if you did that, you get the Tingle Tuner. Which is like Tingle, the guy who throws fairies. He dresses like a fairy. Like he's there and he can like you play on the Game Boy as Tingle and like you throw bombs and stuff.
Oh, okay.
And then he helps you find fairies.
Well, and like Tingle in the regular game usually like sells you maps and useful objects like that. So.
Yeah, so that's what he does in a Wind Waker too. He sells ocean charts. But he also flies around if you have the Tingle Tuner plugged in.
Tingle Tuner.
That's what they call it.
Poorly named, I think.
The Tingle Tuner.
Yeah. But yeah, like Zelda has those like different elements. You know, it has the side quests, it has the dungeons, it has the action, and it sort of has the exploration.
And then each game has its own little gimmick that's associated with it,
True, and then it has a different gimmick. I'd say I definitely lean towards the side quests and the dungeons. Like those two parts are my favorite of it. And I don't know if the exploration is my least favorite because I get lost sometimes.
I think it depends on the game.
That's probably true.
Like if you're exploring, you can't really explore in the smaller ones.
True.
If you're exploring in Twilight Princess, you find Hyrule Field. There's nothing there. It's just a big space full of nothing. So like you can't. You're exploring nothing if you're exploring in Twilight Princess.
Aw.
You get to Castletown in Twilight Princess.
I don't remember. It's been a long time.
They did a really good job with that. And in Twilight Princess, if you're a Wolf Link, you can talk to all the dogs.
Ah.
So that's fun.
Okay.
Like there's a dog in Castletown. We talk to him. He says, "I don't like this town. The rough ground hurts my paws."
Aw. Poor puppy.
Yeah, it's cute. Yeah, it's good. And then trying to think of other gimmicks we didn't talk about.
Well, I don't know if this is a gimmick, but some of them have this and some of them don't. Where again, my example would be Ocarina of Time, where you spend at least a lot at the beginning of the game, sort of in your own village and learning about. I don't know if you learn, but interacting with the different other kids in the town and the adults and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's an important aspect
That's cool.
of the
And
game.
the music was the big gimmick in that one.
Oh yeah,
Like getting all the different songs.
Do 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 do.
Ba-da-bum, ba-da-bum, ba-da-da-da-da-dum.
Yeah, so like all that.
Oh man, I feel sorry for anybody listening to that with headphones just now. That totally just clipped all the audio. Whoops.
Oh, and another aspect of the game that crops up, especially in the ones where you're a kid, is that a lot of times, like, you'll go into a shop and the shopkeeper will say something like, "Oh, kids aren't allowed here," or "You can come in the shop, but you can't buy bombs because bombs are dangerous for children."
Yeah.
So then you have to find a way around that. And that's sort
like
of an interesting
after time you
component.
become an adult, then he's like, "Oh, take all these bombs, dude."
Yeah, because that's safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like Four Swords, you have the four links. That's really fun. Because like in Four Swords Adventure, like you have these different formations you said to put Link up in to like fight all the enemies.
Ooh.
Like you can have him like Link in a square,
Like back to back, kind
like
of.
back to back in a square. Then they like make a diamond. Well, like a diamond is all back to back.
Okay.
Squares like they're in two single file lines. then you can make them like go straight vertical or straight horizontal to do certain things. Like if you big rock, one link can't pick it up alone, but if you put them in a square, the two links together can like pick up a rock, and like they all four will push the rocks.
Oh, that's
So
clever.
it's really well done, and then like you turn into like a diamond to like have like become like a spinning circle of swords, just like trying to kill everybody.
So you're like the Tasmanian devil just spinning around.
And that game's also cool because it's a co-op, so like you can have one controlling everybody, or if you hook up Game Boy Advances, you can't use GameCube controllers for it.
That's weird.
It makes sense though because like it's all four people. If you like one person goes into a dungeon, like goes underground, it shows up on the GBA screen.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So it's kind of dumb, but I get it.
Okay.
Like you can have all four people playing as each Link.
All right. That sounds kind of neat.
Yeah, I've never done it because you have to have the game. You have to have 4 Game Boys. You have to have 4 Game Boy Link cables.
Oh. Yeah. No.
It just isn't feasible.
Yeah.
But watch it. Like, you can find Let's Plays on YouTube of people doing it. And
I'm sure.
It looks good.
Okay.
It looks really fun. I think. Trying to think of other gimmicks.
Well,
I think we got all the major ones.
yeah. Well, I mean, like, what was the Skyward Sword gimmick? I mean, I think I know, but
You could fly.
ooh.
So it's like Wind Waker, but in the sky.
Okay.
So there's these sky islands, and you have like a giant red bird that you go place to place on.
Is the bird the king?
No,
Oh, okay.
no,
Is it Zelda?
no.
Oh.
Zelda's in that game. So like it starts off you're in like a Sky Knight Academy. That's where his little tunic comes from. That's the uniform.
Ah.
It's like everyone gets a different color. So the Link's was green. Here, that's how it became synonymous with them.
Okay.
Zelda is like still the princess-ish, kind of. Her dad's the quote king of Hyrule, the headmaster of the school.
Ah. So he's Dumbledore.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so like you go around and then like you're trying to save the world while she's simultaneously trying to save the world. So like you're on parallel paths. You're not trying to save her. You're just trying to like stop this guy called Girahim, which is controlled by a guy named Demise, who turns into Ganon.
Oh, okay.
Like the first incarnation of Ganon. That game's fun. Like you can explore Skyloft, which is like the hometown at night. If you go into the school at night, you find the headmaster taking a bath, just crying over the fact that Zelda's gone. So me and my sister called it his sadness baths. He'd just sit there and cry.
So he just filled the bathtub with his tears?
Yeah.
Oh.
That's definitely a game worth playing someday.
Well, and that's also the one that relied most on the motion controls, right?
But it worked though, because you have to have like the special Wii Motion Plus controller to do it. So like it follows your every move. So
Okay.
it worked.
Oh, that's good, because I remember in Twilight Princess, like
It didn't work.
vaguely worked, but it didn't work perfectly, for sure.
You know, it works 85% of the time in Skyward Sword.
Okay, that's
It's a
good
much
enough.
it's a much more enjoyable experience. Like some hits like don't register the right direction all the time, but it doesn't really matter most of the time. Like there's parts where you have to like raise your arm up to like charge the beam in the sword, but that's the only time it really matters. You can just like swing it aimlessly and end up killing everybody.
Swinging it. That sounds like what you would do.
It's cool. Like there's a part in that game where you have bomb flowers and you're like trying to bowl to get it under. So like you got to like wee bowl with the bomb
that's
flowers.
cool.
Yeah, it's a fun game.
See, I could imagine like you're in a canoe and you have to like row, on
Yeah.
either side. That'd been kind of neat.
Yeah, it was actually my favorite game until I played through Majora's Mask.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
my favorite Zelda game. I didn't play Majora's Mask on N64 because I just never had one. But when they did the 3DS port of it, I got it, and it was really good.
Yeah, and that's been something they've been doing a lot lately is porting N64 and GameCube games onto 3DS and the other systems. So that's kind of neat.
Yeah, Majora's Mask used like the brand new 3DS has like a C snub, I guess. I remember my DS. I had like the original DS. It broke the week the new one came out.
That's convenient.
So I was like, okay, it's a sign, but Nintendo doesn't know how to stock game
Right.
systems, so it
They
took me a
rarely
week
do.
and a half to find. I had to go to GameStop at 8:30 or 9:30 in the morning.
Ew.
Because I was at school, so I had an 8 o'clock class. Got out at 9:30. Went to GameStop. They had 2. So I was like, one of them's mine now.
And I was surprised at how well that little C-stick nubbin works.
It works really well.
Yeah.
It's not every game uses it, but Majora's does.
I would think the 3D games would, yeah.
Yeah, not. it has to have like Wii Circle Pad support, which is like another attachment you'd put onto it.
Oh,
But they just built it into that. So
Okay.
like the Monster Hunter games use it, Kingdom Hearts uses it,
Hmm.
and Ocarina of Time uses it. I don't think that many other games do.
Oh, okay.
Or Majora's Mask used it rather.
Mm-hmm.
It works though.
Yeah, it works really well.
And then like the special new DS games use that too. Like the Xenoblade port used it,
Hmm.
and then the Hyrule Warriors on it used it, which should have been a new DS port, but they just didn't.
Okay.
They said it could work for all 3DSs,
Mm-hmm.
but it didn't work on the non-new 3DSs because it was too powerful of a game.
I can see that. The graphics, at least on the Wii U version, were really nice. So.
And it's on par with the new DS because the new DS is like 3DS on steroids.
Don't take drugs, kids.
Unless you want to. Do you got anything else to add about Zelda while we're...
Yeah. Actually, I've sort of nursed a wish for a future Zelda game for a long time.
What is your... I think we've talked about this
We have,
before, but
but-
let's hash that out again.
So, and what's funnily enough, I've had this idea for a long time, but Breath of the Wild makes me want it even more. So, like, one of Breath of the Wild's main themes is that you are in the wild. And so, like, you interact with nature and you do different things like that. Well, I would like to see a urban Zelda game.
That'd be sweet.
And so my concept of it is, instead of spending a little time in town and leaving Hyrule Castle or whatever, you spend the entire game inside the city walls.
So it'd be like Zelda Castletown.
Kind of, yeah. And like people would go, well, how would you go to different worlds? Well, like, for instance, what are the rock guys called again?
Gorons.
Gorons, right? Well, instead of going to the Goron Kingdom, you go to the Goron Town. You know, like how big cities have like Chinatown or Greek Town.
Yeah.
You know, like that. Well, you go to like the Goron Town
So
version of the city of Hyrule.
would it still be like fantasy themed, or would it be modern?
No, it would be fantasy themed, but you're just like in a large medieval walled city. And then, of course, like different aspects of it, you know, you begin like in your hometown, in region or borough of the city, like think of like New York City. And then you go to different regions to get different things, you know, like.
That'd be sweet.
Yeah. And like, again, like I could imagine, like one of the problems is it takes a long time for you to get either like the maps or the passes or the prestige in order to get into the Hyrule Castle itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could even have levels or parts of where you're inside the walls or like in basements and dungeons and like find secrets within the city.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
I think it would be really neat, and I think it would just be a different theme, but you could find a million ways, I think, of taking the Zelda tropes and just refashioning them to a urban setting.
I think a modernized Zelda would be cool.
Really? Like, are you talking about like with cars and guns and things?
Maybe not with guns
Okay.
necessarily, but like a Zelda that takes place in current times, like a non-fantasy one. That might not be a popular opinion.
Well, I'm just curious of like how that would work.
I see that. I don't know, but like you have different modernized items and like still have like dungeons and stuff. Kind of like, I don't know if you're familiar with Final Fantasy at all, but those
Not
probably
really.
not. Those went from like medieval, from like Final Fantasy 1 to 6, then 7 got modern and futuristic.
Well, okay, what if you kind of went halfway? Like, what if you went to, like, well, in American terms, like a colonial period where, like,
That'd be cool,
you
too.
do have, you know, you would have, like, muskets, but, you know, they're not, like, automatic rifles. They take a long time to load.
That would be really awesome too. But I'm thinking like how Final Fantasy 7, it was still modern, but they still used everyone. There's a guy who had like a gun arm, but then the main guy also used like a huge sword, and like the swords were still the main weapon at the time. It's like you still have your master sword and stuff, but it's like more of like a sci-fi route.
Or what if you had like a game where instead of having a regular sword, you had like this laser sword and like you ran around in space?
So Zelda Star Wars.
Yeah, I was being that was a joke.
You just described. You literally
Yes,
just described Star Wars.
I know, I was meaning to.
I mean, we could play Knights of the Old Republic and get the same effect.
I suppose so, yeah.
Not the second one though. The first one. That was a good one.
Oh, what about a Zelda game where it's further back in time? Where you're like Stone Age Zelda.
That'd be funny.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just trying to do different things.
Maybe Zelda from maybe Zelda's perspective,
Yeah.
where you're playing as Zelda. That'd be cool.
And like your mission is to awaken Link.
Or like even maybe Zelda's side of Skyward Sword would be a sweet game to have, because she went on a big adventure like Link did.
Oh, okay.
But-
and like in some of the later ones, like she turns to like a blue like ninja person.
Yeah, in Ocarina of Time, after the time skip, she's
Is it Sheik?
Sheik, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is just Zelda posing as a man, so nobody knows that it's Zelda.
It's like Zelda as Batman, essentially.
Yeah, so like
Yeah.
a Sheik game would be sweet.
Yeah, I could see that.
I'd play that. Or like a game from Ganon or Vadi's point of view. Vadi being the other main bad guy in mostly the handheld games.
So, like, what if you're Ganon and your goal is to destroy Hyrule or take it over?
Like
or
how
something?
fun would, or like Ganon in the when the sea, like the Great Flood. Because like there was no hero then.
Yeah.
It's like I'm sure they could find a conflict, but that'd be a really easy one to put Ganon in control of, and then figure out what happened during the Great Flood.
Yeah. I'd play that. That
I
sounds
think
fun.
I think that'd be a good one, because Ganon's a popular character too.
Well, for sure. I mean, in video games, he's other than maybe Bowser, he's the most famous video game villain.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I'd play that.
Well, that's okay. See, here's another thing. All of the Nintendo-themed games where Link and/or Zelda appear, like Mario Kart
Smash
and
Bros.
Smash Brothers, especially.
That'd be cool.
Well, for instance, in a lot of the Smash Brothers games, I'm not very good at Smash Brothers, but I usually play Link because I think he's one of the easier characters to play.
Toon Link is easier too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I haven't played a lot of the ones with Toon Link in it, but yeah.
Well, I mean that's only the new one.
Right.
I want the new one.
Mm-hmm.
I want to play as Tingle in the new one. How great would that be?
I think if you played as Tingle, everyone would just gang up.
like how great. Well, I mean, they can make it work though. Like the new one has the villager from Animal Crossing in it,
That's true.
and he's my main guy now when I play.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
What about the what is it, Wii Fit guy?
We Fit Trainers in the new one.
Yeah. Yep. And the Punch Out guy.
Punch Out guy, Little Mac is what they call him. Mr. Game and Watch is in
Mr.
it.
Game and Watch.
So like, I don't see why they could. They could put Pac-Man in there and make it work. They could probably put Tingle in and make it work.
Probably.
I mean, they're putting the Splatoon kids in there. They could probably make. They could make it work.
Yeah, you're probably right. Mm-hmm.
We'll definitely talk about the new Smash Bros. When that comes out
Right. Because what is that, next year, I think?
this year.
This year, okay.
Yeah, I think I want to say August actually.
I mean, it's definitely coming out before Christmas because they're going to want all those Christmas sales.
Let's see.
Mitchell is looking it up right now.
Because I think it comes out soon. Yeah, Nintendo's holding a Smash Bros. Switch tournament in June.
Ah.
Let's
So that
see.
might be the announcement of when it's coming out.
Yeah, see, I found an article from today about the release date.
Okay.
Today
Today being late March.
it was today March 25th is when this was posted. This podcast might actually go up tonight.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So before the previous one, because that one is...
The previous one is taking much longer than anticipated. So you'll probably hear this
it's
before
mostly my fault.
Yeah, you'll hear this before you hear the dinosaur one, I'd imagine. Because this one's going to be very straightforward to get together.
Okay.
Okay, so they're having the tournament at E3,
Okay.
which means we'll probably get a release date at E3.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you hope for E3? Let's just go more. Let's bring this from
Okay.
Zelda to video games, because
Okay, fine.
why not? We're here.
Well, as always...
I have thoughts about this.
All right, go ahead.
What do
go
you want
ahead.
to see at E3?
Well, as always, I want Luigi's Mansion for Switch because that's one of my favorite games of all time.
Yes.
I would also like to see like more like a 3D platformer. Like I know there's a lot of downloadable, third-party 2D platformer games, but I'd like to see a 3D platformer. I also would like to see a port to Switch of this game called is it called Duck Wars? But it's really, really fun. I've played it on PC, and it's like a 2D platformer shooter game.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever played N++.
No.
Okay, well, it's like a combination of that and a shooter game, and you play these little ducks, and you like float around on these levels and try to kill each other. It's really fun.
That sounds like a good time.
And that'd be fun for Switch with the playing with the Joy-Cons.
So, I'm looking for 3D Pokemon
Of course.
because they announced that they're making it like a year ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be close to done by now.
You would think.
I also know they're making a new Zelda game right now.
Ah.
We might get an announcement then.
Really? This soon?
Yeah. Well, 'cause they started working on it the second Breath of the Wild came out, which was a year ago.
Yeah, a year.
Over a year already.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I've read an interview with them. They're going back to a more traditional one.
Okay, good.
Yeah, like they wanted to test Breath of the Wild out to see how it worked.
Well, and what's fun with a series like Zelda or Mario is because they know they're always going to make more, it should give them the freedom to try different things.
I think that's what they did. I don't think they'll stick to it. But I do think that they'll definitely incorporate like more open world elements to it because that worked. That worked really well. That wasn't the downfall of the game at all. I think if we had like different dungeons, like actual Zelda dungeons, but we could still do it in whatever order we wanted to, that would be cool.
Okay.
Because like Breath of the Wild, you could do whatever mini dungeon you wanted,
Right.
in whatever order you wanted. Breath of the Wild, you could just go beat the boss right from the start if you wanted to.
But I doubt you could.
Some people have.
Really? How does
Yeah.
that work?
So, node lives all the time to just get good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. See, we're not losers, so we don't have that kind of time.
I don't have that patience. No, for sure.
I mean, we're definitely losers still.
Well,
but we're
very
cool.
true.
We're cool losers.
Eh.
We're closers.
Oh, I know what a kind of game I'd like.
What game would you like?
I'd like to see a flying game, like whether that's like a World War II airplane game or like a starfighter kind of a game. I don't know. I just like those, and there hasn't been that many recently. And because if they do make them, they're part of like Battlefront or
That's
Call of Duty kind of a thing. And so I'd like a more specialized game.
That's
about
something Battlefront 2 did really well.
Yeah, that is a lot better.
I think that's
than
the only
original.
thing Battlefront 2 did really well.
Yeah.
The story in that was
Yeah,
fine.
I mean,
but-
basically, we all want to see EA not get the Star Wars license renewed, right?
Yeah, that's another podcast. That's another topic
Right,
for
yeah.
another day.
Yeah.
I'm excited for Animal Crossing on the Switch
Mm-hmm.
because we haven't gotten a new Animal Crossing since 2012, 2013 was when the 3DS one came out.
Okay.
We had a big Animal Crossing update about a year or two ago, but that would print money.
Okay.
Just like how a Pokemon would print money. People love Animal Crossing.
Oh, I know what a game that I would like. There was a short-lived series on Game Boy and NES called Solomon's Quest or Solomon's Key.
Okay.
And picture like a combination of the combat in a top-down Zelda game with Captain Toad. So
That'd be sweet.
it was like a puzzle game where you like went around and collected key. That's why it's Solomon's Key.
Yeah.
And collect different gems and things. But you had unlike Captain Toad, you have like a magical sword that helps you defeat enemies, and also you can do a thing where if you attack an enemy, it turns it into a platform that you
That'd be sweet.
can step on. Anyway, I think a modern version of that game would be a lot of fun.
I want a new Captain Toad sequel.
Well, duh.
Yeah, the new one's they're putting it on the Switch. There's gonna be like 3 Mario Odyssey themed levels in it.
That does look cool.
So I might get it. We'll see.
Yeah, I probably won't because I already have it on Wii U, but
We'll make the library.
I'm
get
glad
it.
more people. Yeah, I'll play it then.
I want not Nintendo, but I think for like PS4, Xbox, a new Elder Scrolls
Oh yeah.
would be good. 'Cause Skyrim came out 2011, and they're just keep releasing Skyrim, which is fine. But I've already bought the game twice. I'm not buying it again.
I mean, they want you to though.
They want me to. I'm not buying it through VR for it.
Yeah.
I already had it on PC and PlayStation 4. That's plenty.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a great game. I put literally hundreds of hours into it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm ready for a new one.
I'm sure
like,
they would make one.
Because I can only play Oblivion, Morrowind, and Skyrim so many times before I want more Elder Scrolls.
Mm-hmm.
It was made by the people who do like Fallout and Doom.
Oh, okay.
New Doom would be cool.
Wasn't there one from a couple years ago?
It came out like a year ago.
Okay.
Yeah, they just ported it on the Switch.
Mm-hmm.
That was a fun one. It had
Okay.
a really good soundtrack.
All right.
It was like all like 8-string guitar metal with
oh well, yeah, you would like that
with
then.
like electronic music.
Okay.
It was fun.
Mm-hmm.
Any other games You want Zelda or not?
Well, we did talk about. We talked about this during the break, but a Pikmin game.
Yeah, that would be sweet.
Mm-hmm.
We'll probably get one of those. Pikmin's a big. We just got a new Pikmin game actually.
Well, yeah, for 3DS.
But like a main series Pikmin.
Yeah, and again, I think the Joy-Cons offer a lot of opportunity for Pikmin.
Yeah. Even if I'd be okay with like another, even if they made a big console one, but side scrolling like Hey Pikmin was, because like you wouldn't think that would work, but side scrolling Pikmin worked spectacularly.
Huh? And do you still collect parts of your ship and stuff?
Oh, you're not collecting parts of your ship. You're collecting like different artifacts.
Oh, okay.
So like you need to collect X amount of artifacts. It's a platformer,
Mm-hmm.
but you need to collect X amount of artifacts to get through the level.
So you're like a tiny Indiana Jones.
Kinda, yeah.
But it belongs in a space museum.
But with Pikmin.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a really good one. I beat that in like a week.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And they came up with a cute little amiibo to go with it. There's like all the Pikmin just hanging out on a cinder block.
Aw.
So I had to get that with the Hey Pikmin.
Okay.
Then you can like save Pikmin onto it, and then if you need more Pikmin, you put it in the game, and then there they are.
It's like a reserve Pikmin.
Yeah, I'm surprised amiibos haven't gone away yet, but
Well, I think part of it is they look really neat, and
They
so
look
people
neat.
buy them for that.
yeah, but they haven't put any out lately that are good, but they're still using them, and I still love them.
Yeah.
Yeah, amiibo. Have you done amiibos in Breath of the Wild yet?
I don't own any amiibos.
Oh,
so.
dude, Breath of the Wild amiibos are great. Like you put it in the game, then it like drops a treasure chest full of stuff,
Ooh.
like exclusive like weapons and armor, and then food to help you cook with.
Oh, okay. That sounds useful.
Then you drop it. If you get under it, it lands on you and it hurts you. And then you can like pick it up with the magnet power and like hit people with it.
Ooh, fancy.
Yeah, good stuff.
Good stuff.
So, do you know what your topic for next time is, Mark?
Well, possibly. It all depends on you, though. So if you have time, our topic would be to discuss the first season of Star Trek Discovery.
Yes.
Okay. So
Yes.
that'll be our plan.
I'm down with that.
Okay.
But what am I talking about?
I don't know.
We'll see.
Oh, ooh, a mystery this time.
Yeah, it's all things. I have 3 ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Magic the Gathering we might do.
Okay.
Maybe not JQA. JFK conspiracy theories.
Okay.
Or the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega are having a match against each other tonight. So
Okay.
we're all going to talk about that in the future. Who knows when it's going to be? I don't. All right, well, thanks for listening, everybody. You have any parting words for the good people besides like us on Facebook and please
No.
send us an email?
Well, I think I have to give the Great Eagle farewell, which is farewell wherever you fare.
That's a great place to end it. Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.